Optional chaining was a feature of the JavaScript language that was added starting with the ES2020 release. I think it was originally a TypeScript proposal, and then it was merged into the core JavaScript language starting with ES2020. I'm using this more and more, and I'm seeing it being used in production whenever I do code review. But there is a gotcha that can be very, very frustrating when you try to debug code whenever there's a problem. This video isn't meant to teach optional chaining. It is rather, my intent is to point out the gotcha so that you don't get frustrated when there's a bug in the code. So at a high level, uh, optional chaining allow you to access the properties of an object, a JavaScript object. So let's say I have this ticket buy object here, and it has a say hello method in it. Well, we all know how to invoke a function inside of an object, but let's say that I mistakenly presume that there is a method on here. Let's just call it I hate Taylor Swift. So if I were to call this, the normal response from JavaScript is to throw an error, right? Throw a type error. But when you use optional chaining, and you invoke optional chaining by calling the uh, question mark dot operator, you can learn more about optional chaining uh, at the Mozilla Developer Network. I'll link I'll link the um, documentation in the description. So now, if I were to call this, because I'm using optional chaining, it'll return an undefined. And that's the expected behavior for optional chaining. Well, if you work by yourself and you program the app by yourself, you're expecting undefined, right? But if you work in the context of a Scrum team, a multiple Scrum team inside of a large company, when the code base get passed around, this undefined isn't very helpful, right? Uh, you actually might be better off having the compiler throw a type error, so at least you know where to start your debugging. Let me show you an alternative without having to use a whole lot of, else, if, else control flow. So if I'm expecting users to, or other developers to call a method that might not exist, right? If you're running some sort of micro front end and you don't know if a method actually exists, okay, and you use optional chaining, which is legit, which is appropriate. You might want to add something called Nullish Coalescing in JavaScript. You can, and that's, let me spell it out for you guys so you guys can do the research on it on MDN, okay? And it'll short circuit to a default if something is not true. If something on the left-hand side of the Nullish Coalescing operator is not true, then it'll default to whatever, default to a string. You can throw a custom error, or you can default to the empty data structure, right? And you can write some code to handle what happened when the data structure, the array is empty, okay? And so here, instead of throwing undefined, I can do something like, do I really hate Taylor Swift? Okay, something like that. Okay, so you can combine optional chaining with the Nullish coalescing operator. Obviously, you wouldn't be invoking Taylor Swift's name in your production code, right? The whole thing might blow up. But you would want to add the appropriate message here so that you give your teammates a chance to debug properly. And like I said, optional chaining is a wonderful tool. It saves you from writing a whole lot of nested if-else statements. Okay. In a future video, we can do something called um, uh, Nullish coalescing assignment. So stay tuned for that. Let me see. Oh yeah, so also um, you can add optional chaining when you return from a function. Let's say I writing some code to find an element in an array, but that element might not return from the API. Okay, it might be missing. So instead of just throwing undefined, you can add optional chaining on here, and then use knowledge coalescent to write a custom, a custom try catch block in here to better handle your code, better handle your error. And then let me show you another useful way to use optional chaining, and that is in a try catch if there's an error, something like that. Okay. All right. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. If you're not a subscriber, yes, please consider subscribing. If you are already a subscriber, I thank you so very much for being a subscriber. See you next time.